welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Rebecca Berger. This is Justice for All, where you get to hear from legal professionals in the surrounding area. Tonight we are interviewing Marian Kelly from Pop, Joy, and Kelly. Marian, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great meeting you.
I am so glad to meet you. We've spoken now and had such a great conversation. I'm so glad to be able to meet you actually in person.
Yes.
Now that we're no longer, just relegated to our rooms and stuck on Zoom. But
exactly.
Although courts are still somewhat Zoom ridden.
Yes, they are. Unfortunately. I miss the human element.
I think a lot of people do, not being in the courthouse as much. I mean, we're starting to have more. I mean, I know a lot of the trials. Have you had any trials yet in the courthouse again?
I've had certain trial calls. I've had some conferences, but we're still doing a lot of Zoom court depositions, arbitrations, things like that. And like I said, I miss the people.
Yeah. And it's hard because you really, that's how you find that human connection when you're actually seeing them face to face.
Absolutely. And I think, with the practice of law, although we're attorneys and we know the law, our practices are really about the people we work with and represent. And I think, when you're doing a lot by Zoom, you do miss the opportunity not only for the other attorneys to meet your clients, but also to get to know the other attorneys and also the court staff, the judges, and things like that. And that was really an important part of the practice, I think.
I don't disagree with that. I think that's actually really important because you do get to see a lot of the staff and the judges and the judges' staff a lot when you're in the courthouse. And I also think it helps in terms of resolving cases too. Sometimes having clients there and the attorneys there, we're talking about things right there.
And definitely, and in my experience, just running into attorneys in the courthouse might enable you to settle a case that you're not even there on, but you just meet a colleague and you have a joint, case together, and just seeing them prompts you to discuss it. Whereas if you're in your office, you're doing other things, you might not make that phone call, but when you see them, that prompts you to move your case forward for your client, which is in everyone's best interest.
So did you always want to be an attorney?
I did as a young girl. My mother was a legal secretary, and she always had a lot of respect for the attorneys she worked with, and she encouraged me to become an attorney. And my strengths in school were always reading and writing, and so going to law school was a natural progression after college. I was a communication major, so oddly enough, television broadcasting was something I considered but never got into. And so, I went to law school, and, my first job really is what kind of led me onto my chosen practice area. I didn't know what kind of attorney I wanted to be, but like I said, I was good at reading and writing and arguing. So it was a natural fit.
Well, interestingly enough, everybody thinks, when you're going to be an attorney, everybody wants to be in the courtroom, but not everybody does want to be in the courtroom.
And that's something that I think, when I meet different attorneys and different types of attorneys, I'm always surprised by those that are not litigators, because I happen to be a litigator, and so I've always been in the courtroom. But there is plenty of opportunity for people who don't want to go into that area, into litigation. But like I said to you earlier, the thing about what we do is we're of service to people. And whether you're somebody who does more corporate work, you still have clients, you still have people that you're servicing. Whereas for general practitioners, all areas of the practice of law, people come to us with a problem or an issue. Sometimes it's good stuff, like they've just bought their first home, or they need a will, so they're planning for their future, or they need a name change. And those are things that, of course, you're of service to in good times. But many clients come to us in bad times. I know that the type of law you practice, people are in bad times. And for me, I do personal injury work, so people are in accidents and they need some legal advice. They have medical bills usually. They come to the office clutching the medical bill. What do I do with this? And so, a lot of times you're dealing with people who are in distress. And that's when you really have to, dig down deep and be of service. And I think one of the most important things of being an attorney is being that, which is of service.
So what made you go towards that area of law, of personal injury law?
So simply my first job. I was, hired by a personal injury law firm when I was in my first year of law school. And I was always working with a plaintiff's attorney, and I enjoyed it. And I was fortunate when I graduated, they offered me a position, and I was with that law firm, which was a medium-sized law firm in Gloucester County for 18 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I always did plaintiff personal injury. And then after 18 years, I moved on to a large personal injury firm in Burlington County, and I was there and enjoyed that as well. But about 14 years ago, I started my own practice with one of my friends who I had worked with previously. And so we started our own practice, and that's really what enabled me, I think, to come into my own as an attorney, was having my own practice.
And why do you think that it enabled you to come into your own?
I think as a young attorney, I definitely struggled with my own self-confidence. I always thought everyone was smarter and better, and I was maybe a little intimidated at times. And so, fast forward, I'd been practicing for 17 years, before I opened my own practice. But that really made me gain the confidence to become, the best possible attorney for my clients that I could be. It just definitely gave me that boost, like, yes, I can do this. I'm confident. And I just became more involved with the local bar association and took on more leadership roles that for some reason escaped me when I was a younger attorney. I was more in that associate mode. And I learned a lot as an associate, and I always try to learn something even today, every day. But becoming, the partner in my own practice, because it's just me and one other attorney, that really, really enabled me, I think, to come into my own.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you say that, because you focus a lot in how you felt as a younger attorney, because now you actually volunteer your time to work on the character committee for the bar examiners as well, which is actually kind of, giving back to those young attorneys who are coming into the field.
Absolutely. I mean, I think as a young attorney, the best thing you can do is get yourself a mentor, and that's really readily available. Join the local bar association and get involved and meet people. Especially since COVID, I think a lot of people work from home. Young attorneys work from home and as part of larger firms, but they don't get the daily camaraderie that you used to get with being in person in a law office. And I do, the last couple of years, I've been a member of the character committee for the bar examiner's office. And when you become an attorney, it's not only passing the bar exam, it's you have to complete a character and fitness questionnaire. And as a volunteer attorney, as part of that committee, we help the attorneys become members of the bar. If there are certain things on their applications that, kind of they need help with. Maybe they have some financial issues. Maybe they have substance abuse issues. Maybe they have past, sometimes they have past criminal matters. And so we work with them to assist them to become the best attorney they can be, sometimes by letting them know that there's programs available for attorneys, whether it's the Lawyer's Assistance Program, mentoring, enabling them, again, to be of service to the community in the best way they can be.
And you feel like, did you have mentors available to you when you were coming up and rising up as an attorney?
I definitely did. The senior partner that I worked for was great, and he went on to become an appellate judge. And that's really who trained me for the first 10 years of my practice. And so that was a very fortunate experience for me. When he went on to become a judge, I then worked with another senior partner in the practice and learned different skills from that attorney. That attorney was very much into networking and into building a practice. So I kind of learned the business aspect of it 10 years in.
Well, it's helpful now that you have your own firm.
Correct. And I think that really enabled me to progress to that next step for me. Having my own practice is not something I ever thought I would do, but it's been the most enjoyable thing of my 30 years of practicing.
So why stay in the area of personal injury?
I think attorneys are really specialized, and so, sometimes what you first learn is what you keep improving yourself, and as you go on in your career, you feel like that's the best area where you can be of service to people in the knowledge that you've gained from your years of practice. Because as a young attorney, you kind of don't really know, you know, what you're doing, so to speak, which is always kind of surprising because you figure by the time you get to law school, you know, you're a lawyer, you know what to do, and you have so much to learn. And so I have found, for my own comfort, you know, I don't stray too far from what I know. I do get to know the other lawyers in my community, so if clients come to me for practice areas that I don't know, I'm directing them to the people who are good at those other practice areas. And I think, you know, you have to know what you don't know, not just what you do know.
So have you seen auto negligence change in the time that you've been in this field?
Yes, it's become much more restrictive for the clients to be able to make a recovery for their pain and suffering. I think jurors are a little more skeptical these days and maybe not as generous towards the personal injury plaintiff. But like I said earlier, people do come to you not only because they're in physical pain from having been in an accident, whether it's a car accident, a slip and fall, even a dog bite, an injury on the job. Those are the types of cases I do. People come because they have now financial obligations or pressures that they didn't have before this accident, that, you know, they didn't cause or they didn't ask to be, you know, happening to them. So you're not only helping people from the physical and mental perspective, but you're really helping people who are out of work, who maybe can't pay their bills. You know, you're making sure that those things are taken care of for them with all the available remedies that are available that they don't know of unless they come to an attorney.
Well, and I want to talk a little bit more about your practice and, you know, what you do on a daily basis when we come back from the commercial break.
Thank you.
This is Justice for All. I'm Rebecca Berger, and we'll be right back after this commercial break.
Hi, I'm Bob Hochgertel from Kings Road Brewing Company. I'm here to tell you about a brand new show on RVN television called Cooking with the King. Each week, we're going to taste and sample some of the best beers the Kings Road Brewing Company has to offer. And we're going to talk to area chefs and restaurant owners as we pair our beer with their signature dishes. We're going to teach you how to cook and eat like a king. Cheers.
A stroke can be easy to detect. A loved one can't speak, perhaps they can't move. But there's another sign of a stroke that many of us can't see. It's called spatial neglect, and it can occur during or after a stroke, causing distorted visual movements. Fortunately, there's a solution by using optical prism technology during rehabilitation. If you or a loved one have experienced a stroke, ask your doctor about spatial neglect. Spatial neglect. See the whole picture at KesslerFoundation.org.
Are you burned out, disenfranchised, disengaged, extremely distracted? Do you feel that you're lost in semantics, over-leveraged, overwhelmed? My name is Lisa Fratelli, and I have a show on RVN TV, always streaming. The name of the show is The Neuroscience of Wealth and Well-Being. The intention of this show is to explain how you can get back to homeostasis, flow states, creativity. It's highly correlated with happiness and well-being. So you can get out of overwhelm, get out of burnout, not feel distracted, and get back to your life. You will hear from experts who will get you back on track so you can enjoy your life again. RVN TV, we're always streaming.
Are you part of the Great Resignation? Are you a business owner that would like to diversify your business holdings? Have you always had an entrepreneurial itch but did not have a concept to get you started? Milestone Franchising represents over 500 franchise concepts across 30 industries. Concepts range from $20,000 to $6 million, and they can be home-based, office-based, mobile, or brick and mortar. We guide you through the process to select which concept is best for you based upon your core competencies, your interests, and your financials. Milestone Franchising is part of the International Franchise Professionals Group, IFPG, and will bring
Welcome back. I'm Rebecca Berger. This is Justice for All. We're talking to Marian Kelly. Marian, before we went to commercial break, we were talking about personal injury and, medical negligence or in auto negligence. So what would you say has been some of the most difficult cases that you've dealt with in terms of auto negligence and how it's made a difference in your practice?
Well, one of the things in New Jersey is that accident victims are very restricted in terms of making a recovery for their pain and suffering unless they have a significant permanent injury. Mm-hmm. And so people are really hurt, but not hurt enough. And that's really hard to explain to a client that mm-hmm. if you went in front of a jury and the court read the jury charge, you probably wouldn't get any compensation. Mm-hmm. And they don't understand because they were not at fault. And so, that's been a pretty drastic change in the practice since I started practicing. Also the type of insurance that's available to my clients. Mm-hmm. Right now, there's available coverages for their medical bills, for their property damage that are a lot less than they used to be. And people, we all pay a lot of premium dollars for mm-hmm. our coverages. And people unfortunately only find out they're not adequately covered mm-hmm. once they're in an accident. So I'm always kind of the bearer of bad news. And once people are in an accident, we are in no-fault state in New Jersey, so everyone has to pay their own medical bills regardless of fault. But like I said earlier, people come to you clutching those medical bills because they're so worried for their financial future and what this means for them apart from their actual injuries. And so, I do a lot of counseling in that respect. And one of the things that my partner and I do is for clients, family, and friends, we'll invite them to come in with their auto insurance policies and explain to them what their coverages mean, because mm-hmm. people don't necessarily know what they're purchasing. They just know they need minimum limits of insurance coverage mm-hmm. to be able to drive, and that's very true. But sometimes they're not adequately protected, and so we do offer that service free of charge. Anyone who wants to come in mm-hmm. will look at your policy and tell you, if you really want to be protected, mm-hmm. this is what we recommend you purchase. And it's hard to understand if you've not been involved in an accident why you wouldn't be covered when someone else is causing injury to you. But it does happen, and it happens every day, unfortunately.
Well, and I don't think, for example, you were saying with the medical bills, I don't think necessarily people always realize there's PIP protection.
Correct.
That you can actually pay for up to, I think, still $250,000.
But what we're finding these days is insurance companies do offer only $15,000 of coverage, which is really not a lot of coverage if you go to an emergency room and you do some physical therapy. That gets eaten up pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And so, again, people purchase things based on premium dollars, mm-hmm. but there's a pretty big difference between $15,000 in coverage and $250,000 in coverage. And of course, we do explain you'd best be protected by purchasing a larger amount of coverage. And truth be told, it's not that much more money, mm-hmm. but people don't realize that because no one's telling them that. They're just looking for the most affordable. And while we understand that, I always say to people, you can purchase whatever you're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. I just want you to understand the consequences of your choices. And sometimes they're not adequately explained that, particularly these days when a lot of people are purchasing online. There's not necessarily mm-hmm. a live person to talk to them. So we do try to offer that service to be an educated consumer. Know what you're buying, whether it's your health insurance or your auto insurance, because we do a lot of slip and fall work where that's health insurance that comes into play. Because again, you have to pay your own bills even though you were injured on someone else's property. And that can be hard for people to understand initially. They think somebody else should pay that.
But they don't understand they're the ones who are actually paying for that. And and what coverage limits are required, because New Jersey, just in general, is very expensive when it comes to auto insurance, when it comes to health insurance.
Correct.
But they don't realize ultimately it can, if they are the person, because everybody thinks it's not going to happen to them, but if they are the person who ends up in the accident, there may not be coverage to pay for those
Correct.
medical bills. So I guess if we're getting that recovery, that recovery is going to go towards medical bills instead.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I am literally just involved in for the first time is there was a new case that actually was decided within the last few weeks, whereby one of the insurance companies wasn't paying the correct amount of personal injury protection coverage to any of their insureds. And the case went up to the appellate division, and it was found that the insurance company, owed, their insured's money because they had shorted them in the personal injury protection coverage. And so now I'm one of a group of 5 attorneys who are bringing a class action lawsuit against that insurance company to get compensation for all the people who purchased a certain amount of insurance from a certain carrier, and to force them to pay what they should have, what the minimum coverages were according to law. So that's a new area that I've never been involved in, and that's kind of interesting. Like I said earlier, I like to learn stuff every day, and so that's something new that I'm involved in.
But it actually makes sense because you've been involved and do understand that PIP protection, that personal injury protection under the insurance, is important for these medical bills, and people don't necessarily understand that. And here people may have been losing out on their recovery solely because this insurance carrier wasn't paying their portion, even though the person paid for it.
Correct. And I think, people also are concerned if they don't have health insurance, they don't realize that auto insurance does pay for your medical bills. That comes to news to a lot of people. So that is, again, something that we educate our clients about, but unfortunately they're coming to us after the accident's already happened. We do try to invite people to come in so that we can explain it to them before anything happens. And we do that, just as a community service.
Do you think people are more skeptical, like juries are more skeptical now with drivers in terms of why people are suing to begin with?
Most definitely. I think plaintiffs aren't regarded favorably by juries because I think they view plaintiffs and plaintiffs' attorneys as the reasons for the high cost of insurance, the high cost of medical care. So it's definitely something we have to overcome when we're in front of a jury. And also, like I said earlier, the law is very restrictive. You do have to prove a significant permanent injury. And sometimes, clients will undergo surgeries for their injuries, but if they have a good recovery, sometimes a jury's not even impressed that they had to do a surgery. A lot of people have a lot of health issues and they're not getting compensated for them. So juries are very, very skeptical these days.
It's kind of interesting because you can go to another state, and most states are much cheaper in terms of auto insurance. You still have auto accidents, you still have people suing them, but their rates aren't as high, so it makes no sense to somehow suggest, it's just illogical to suggest, well, you're just suing in New Jersey, hence making our rates so high.
It's surprising because when I first started practicing, if you were the plaintiff and you went in front of a jury, 9 times out of 10, they were compensating you. They understood what you went through. Now it's done a complete 360, and it's 1 out of 10 plaintiffs actually get a recovery from a jury. That's how skeptical the public has become.
Wow.
So it's definitely a huge turnaround in the practice, and it's hard for plaintiffs clients to understand that.
So, Marian, if someone wanted to contact you, reach out to you, retain your services, talk to you about their auto insurance policy, how would they do that?
So they can call my office, which is in Voorhees. The office number is 856-845-8778, or my email is mkelly, which is MKELLY, @popjoykelly.com. And we do welcome anyone to come in for a free consultation, even if they haven't been in an accident yet, because we really do want to educate them as consumers.
Well, Marian, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Pleasure meeting you.
This is Justice for All. I'm Rebecca Berger, and we'll see you back next week.